Welcome everyone to Make It Make Sense. I'm your host, Monique Pressley. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you being here where we try to do exactly what the title says every single day. Make it make sense. Take the information that you need to know and put it in a manner where you can actually understand it, dialing down the noise, the rhetoric, giving you the who, what, where, when, why of whatever it is. If it's confusing, if you need clarity, or if it's a day like today where I am particularly thankful, always thankful for this platform, but especially thankful days like today, where we get an opportunity to bring information that can save lives immediately. News you need to know, yes, but information that can change the scope of your lifespan for you, for your family members, for your loved ones. Today is World Hypertension Day, and I probably don't have to tell you that hypertension and high blood pressure and all of the attendant illnesses and diseases that come from it directly and disproportionately affect Black and Brown communities. And I don't think I knew before I was preparing for this interview how much more so it affects Black and Brown men. So right now, even before I bring on our guest, I want you to be sending messages, post and say that you're on here. Send messages in Instagram telling people to come on and get this information. And of course, it'll be available afterward. But we want you to get it while the getting is good, hot off the press. So my guest for today, who I'm very excited to welcome for the first time to Make It Make Sense, is Dr. Richard T. Benson. He is the director of the Office of Global Health and Health Disparities for the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. And he's going to help us to make it make sense so that we can live our very best thriving lives. And it's my pleasure. I know that they're already on here, so I'm going to just click and welcome him in. Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing, Monique?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And before we even start, if there's something you can do to just make your camera a little bit lower so we don't get your head chopped off, so we can see your whole body, not your whole body, but at least see your whole head. Just come down a little bit or angle so that we get up, not that way, the other way, whatever that is, go up, 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 up.
Let me see.
Yeah.
How's that?
Well, it was better. Let's keep trying. I can see more ceiling than you right now. There you go. You're on here. Yay.
Okay, let me get it and try not to move. Okay, very good.
That's perfect. That's perfect. But Dr. Benson, just, you know what? Thank you so much for coming. And as I said in the intro, I really am very grateful that I get to utilize this platform on days like today, when I know that there are things that our folks need to know that this very day can keep them alive longer if they utilize the information, take it to heart, and make the changes. Or even if they just utilize the information to find out the things that they don't already know. So today is World Hypertension Day. What is a World Hypertension Day and why do we need one?
Yes, it is. Well, let me just say it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be with you today and for you to use your platform in order to spread this news about hypertension and stroke. It's also Stroke Awareness Month, and to get that out to the public and talk about the disparities. Well, 1 in every 3 adult Americans actually has high blood pressure, and only about 50% of those that actually have it have their blood pressure under control. And when you start to think in terms of African Americans, you have fewer people that actually have their blood pressure under control. And African American men is the group that has the highest rate of uncontrolled hypertension in the country. And high blood pressure is known as the silent killer because it's associated with so many negative health outcomes like stroke, heart attack, as well as this connection with dementia. And I'll talk about that a little bit more.
So 1 in 3, that's a big round number.
That's a lot.
And I don't want to skip steps. So I want just to understand, what is hypertension?
Great question. So your body is sort of a closed loop with your heart pumping blood to the organs in your body, and your organs need that blood to carry the oxygen to them in order for them to survive. Then after the oxygen has been used, the blood goes from the veins back to the heart to get oxygenated again. And so the heart sort of pumps in this continuous process the blood out of the heart, and it receives it into the heart. And when the heart is contracting, the heart is a really strong, large muscle. When it's contracting, it increases the pressure within the arteries in the system. And so when it's contracting, that's when the pressure is highest in the arterial system. And that number should usually be no higher than 120. And when it's relaxing, that pressure should go down to about 80. Now, people who have hypertension or high blood pressure, your pressures go higher than those numbers. It can go up into the 200s, the top number, and it can stay to 110 or 120 for those lower numbers.
How much of, and is there two different kinds? Like, is there the type of high blood pressure or hypertension that is related to activity or anxiety or situations, and then another kind that is related to things that are going on in your body, or are they one and the same?
Well, hypertension or high blood pressure is defined by 3 elevated readings on separate occasions. So, not with the same day at the same time, but on 3 separate occasions, usually when someone goes to their primary medical care doctor, or, which we do suggest, getting you a blood pressure cuff and checking your blood pressure at home, maybe a week or so apart. And if you notice on 3 separate occasions that your blood pressure remains above 120/80, then that diagnoses you with high blood pressure. Now, you ask a great question, because oftentimes people will get they'll get anxious at times, and the blood pressure will go up.
Or white coat syndrome, like when you're in the doctor's office and your nerves are bad.
Right, that's another one. But what I suggest, normally the blood pressure should be checked when you're seated. Both feet should be planted on the floor, and the blood pressure cuff should be at the level of the heart, and you should be relaxed. So normally you shouldn't run into a doctor's office and sit down and have the blood pressure checked right away. You should wait and relax. Or you don't want to go for a run or work out in the gym and sit down and check your blood pressure, because it's probably going to be higher at that time and not optimal at that time. But with the white coat syndrome, you mentioned that. In my experience, people who come to the doctor, and every time they come to the doctor, the blood pressure is elevated, even after they sit and they rest for a period of time. What that tells me is that there are probably other periods of time when that person's blood pressure is elevated as well. And so I think it's something that should be addressed. Doesn't necessarily mean medication all the time, but it definitely should be checked. Self blood pressure monitoring with a home cuff would be important, to check it at other times and at different times of the day as well, to see, if it can be under control that way. But that definitely is a red light with the white coat syndrome, that the blood pressure should be followed more closely.
Okay. And I know that hypertension and stroke are going hand in hand, but stroke is preventable if you're doing the right things around your blood pressure. Is that right? Or are there other, and I guess my follow-up question to that would be, is high blood pressure preventable? And if so, what are the root causes for that?
Great questions. Well, we divide the risk factors for stroke and cardiovascular disease into those that are non-modifiable, meaning we can't do anything about them to change, and those that are modifiable. So non-modifiable risk factors include your age. Above the age of 5, your risk of heart attack and stroke will go up. Your family history, your gender, your race, and your ethnicity. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into disparities. But those are what we call non-modifiable risk factors for stroke. And we can't do anything about those things. And I say those are things usually to be proud of because you can't change them. The other things, when we think of modifiable risk factors, the number one modifiable risk factor for stroke and cardiovascular disease and also for dementia is, for vascular dementia, is high blood pressure, uncontrolled high blood pressure. It's at the top of the list because it is so highly prevalent, as I mentioned, 1 in every 3 Americans, but also is closely linked to the development of these disorders. And so,
put a pin right there. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to me, with us watching the numbers ticking up and up and up for dementia, for Alzheimer's, for all of these just deteriorative conditions of the mind, it blew me when I was looking at the research. Thank God you have really great people who said and enabled me to know way more. I thought I knew stuff. I didn't have a clue because I've been dealing with something in my family recently. So I knew more this week, unfortunately, than last week. But when I saw that high blood pressure was related to dementia,
yes, yeah.
I don't think if I knew it, I forgot it, which is not good.
Well, it's fairly new over the last few years or so, last number of years, this connection between dementia, vascular dementia, and stroke. And that's right now, it's the only modifiable risk factor because we do know that there are genetic factors that are related to dementia. There's different types of dementia. Dementia is sort of a general term or someone that has memory loss in addition to loss of other sort of higher level brain functions, like your reasoning, your ability to understand certain situations. Let's say if someone was walking down the street and saw a letter on the ground with a stamp that was addressed, what do you do with that? Most people would say, let me pick it up and put it in the mailbox. But if your judgment or your reasoning is off, in addition to memory loss, then we consider that dementia. But the most common cause of dementia is what we call mixed dementia. So it's Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's has certain pathologic findings associated with it. And then the other types of dementia, vascular dementia, there's Lewy body disease. There's other kinds of dementia that are there. But the most common type of dementia is mixed dementia, where you have vascular changes in the brain related to uncontrolled high blood pressure and Alzheimer's disease. So that's sort of the most common type. And so that's why this finding from the Sprint Mind study, which is a study that was supported by the NIH and the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, where I work, it was so significant because this is the first modifiable risk factor for stroke and dementia, and that connection that we talked about. But you asked another interesting question in terms of, is hypertension preventable? I do think that there are people that have a genetic predisposition to hypertension and they're more salt sensitive. And African Americans tend to be more salt sensitive. And I've seen a lot of people who are in excellent health, work out all the time, and their blood pressures are elevated. And oftentimes it's because of this salt sensitivity. Now, there are other factors that can cause elevated blood pressure. We call those secondary causes of elevated blood pressure, such as kidney problems and other things.
What about weight?
Definitely, weight will increase your blood pressure. So one of the ways to address high blood pressure, one of the things we can do to modify our risk for elevated blood pressure, stroke, dementia, cardiovascular disease, is to get our weight down, to exercise. We should get 20 to 30 minutes of physical activity at the minimum of 3 days a week. And that's just the minimum. If you can get 30 minutes in every day, then you're doing good in order to decrease it. But yeah, getting your weight down, if you're overweight or obese, and being obese is over 20% of your ideal body weight. So if you're in the obese category, it's not good, but also being overweight as well. So physical activity, getting more fruits and vegetables. We should get 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, cutting down on the red meat in particular, but meat in general in your diet, more whole wheats.
Say it again.
More whole wheats.
Nope. Nobody wants to hear cutting down the meat.
Right, right.
And it's one of those things that I think it's so unfortunate, which I enjoy about being able to do this. There's just a lot that we know. Like all the things that you're saying now, you're just rattling off 1, 2, 3, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you'll get better outcomes. And so it's like we know these things now, but there's a gap first between who knows and who doesn't, and then who knows and who's doing something with what they know. So when you're talking about things being preventable, I look at our community and I'm like, Lord, obesity numbers are high, high blood pressure numbers are high, dementia numbers are high, life expectancy is low. Why are we seeing stroke-related and hypertension-related inequities in Black and Brown communities?
That's a great point, Monique. You actually mentioned the fact that some of this information is out there and we do know about it. And we do know that African Americans have the same rates of awareness of high blood pressure and their high blood pressure as other groups. The issue is sort of what motivates people to change their behavior. And that's sort of the question there. And so that's why we sort of created the Mind Your Risk campaign, and we geared it specifically to the highest risk group of people, African American men. Unfortunately, a lot of men don't go to see their medical doctors on a regular basis. And so that's the first thing. And some of it is due to competing needs. They may have other priorities in their life that they feel is more important than their health. And so they don't go to seek medical attention. Or if they're told that they have high blood pressure, they don't take the medications because they don't trust the doctor. They don't want the side effects. They don't talk about that more. And then just sort of, there are a lot of cultural things when you think of those foods that some people like to eat that I think are part of certain cultures, the fried chicken, the macaroni and cheese, and, you know, the greens with all of the pork products inside of them, those kinds of things as well. They can put weight on you, they can raise your blood pressure and all of that. And that can also be counterproductive in terms of your blood pressure. So some of it is cultural. People know better and they just they don't have the self-efficacy that I can actually do something and I don't have to be relegated to having high blood pressure, being overweight, having a heart attack or a stroke, and then having dementia, because I didn't do those things that I can do to change my behavior. So with the Mind Your Risk campaign, we actually created focus groups. We took men that we call African-American men that we felt were in midlife, and that's from 28 to 45. And we asked them, so what type of message would get you to change your behavior, would get you to exercise, to change your diet? And, you know, so one of the taglines that we created is that no one can lower your risk of heart attack or stroke and dementia like you. And so that creates self-efficacy that you can do something to make this difference. We created a nice promotional video that's on our Mind Your Risk website, and we have materials people can check their blood pressure, log that down, and other things that you can do to modify in addition to, you know, getting your blood pressure under control, losing weight, changing your diet, stop smoking, physical activity, getting enough sleep at night. All of those kinds of things actually can modify your risk of high blood pressure, stroke, and dementia, as we talked about. But the key...
I know that we have a great deal of responsibility ourselves, and I'm glad to see the focus on Black men in this age range, because we've been hearing so much more about a man just stroking out and dying, ending up with debilitating illness and disease, and families losing breadwinners on top of all the other reasons that families have lost Black men as breadwinners. But I do want to pay attention to the other reasons that in our community, to me, there's increased incident of poor health outcomes because the care that we get, the medical care in many of our communities, is substandard. And if you look at the numbers, the availability of good food, of food from the earth in these communities is sparse. And I don't see the emphasis being placed on it when we are at the youngest ages. So now we're trying to save lives from 28 to 45 that probably, if had good health habits years sooner, we wouldn't be having to do this message.
No, you're absolutely right, Monique. And these are things that we're trying to consider here at the NIH and the NINDS in terms of how can we, through research, look and try to modify some of these, what we call social determinants of health. We do know that racism is really big, that there's unconscious bias and racism that takes place in medicine, where people go to their medical doctor, and if there's not concordance between the patient and the medical doctor or the medical staff or medical provider, then sometimes that can lead to mistrust and poor care. And so that's really big, and we are looking at that in some of our research studies. The other excellent point that you mentioned is that there are a lot of food deserts throughout the country where you have more small bodegas, you have more wine and beer stores, then you have stores where you can actually get fresh fruits and vegetables. I know in certain areas of the country, they have the open air markets on weekends where people can get locally grown fruits and vegetables, which is great. Oftentimes, though, it's not in those food desert areas, but there are a lot of areas in the country where there are food deserts and food swamps, meaning there may be some things there, but not a whole lot, that makes it difficult for people to get in those 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And you can't, a lot of them don't last for a long time as well. So people will go to canned and processed foods. The other thing is just certain neighborhoods, people live in, it's difficult for them to get out and walk in the evening after getting home from work and in the day. And then it's costly to get a gym membership. And then people don't, because of other competing needs, don't go out and, play basketball or do things that they used to do in the past. So you don't get that physical activity. And so you make some really great points. So some of those are social determinants. And so we are looking at environmental determinants. We're looking at ways that this can be creatively done. It requires collaboration and work from urban planners and how neighborhoods are drawn out in terms of the stores and people having the ability to exercise and all of those kinds of things. And then also medical education, where historically, we've put the responsibility on people to say, well, you aren't doing something right. That's why you're having a stroke and dementia, your blood pressure is not under control. But we do know that education is needed on the part of medical providers as well, so that we can understand our unconscious bias that's there, understand that we need people who speak the language of the people that they're taking care of. People do better when they can relate to the medical provider that's treating them. And so we have to address these issues as well, of training and diversity training and these other things too. So those are all great points.
So in terms of preventative measures, I know the one thing we haven't talked about, we've talked about fruit and vegetables and exercise, but I know it's important that we actually know what our numbers are. If someone doesn't have access to the funds or the means to have a machine to test it at home, where can they go to get that done?
That's a great question. So people, if someone has Medicaid or certain Medicaid programs, but Medicare, and they're diagnosed with high blood pressure, you should be able to get some assistance with paying for a blood pressure cuff. That's something through CMS, Center for Medicaid Services, looking at paying for those, because the data is clear that if people monitor their blood pressure at home in between their visits with their medical doctor, they have a higher chance of getting their blood pressure under control. So that's one thing. The other thing, sometimes just going to fire stations, people can do it, certain neighborhood places. A lot of people have gotten away from health fairs at churches and places like that, but I think that they're beneficial to do that, particularly people that have some type of medical insurance, and will follow up if that value is is high and they need to follow up, that's what's important to do that.
And if you just have information available, like if they get a high reading and all you can give them for that day is here's some things that you can do. So can you not go into drugstores anymore and get your reading?
Yes, you can go into, that's a good point. Thank you. Yeah, you can go into certain drugstores and get it done. And then there are a lot of blood pressure kiosks as well that you can go to. You just have to make sure that it's been calibrated recently. But if you go to a pharmacy and you have it checked, and not just by, I do think those blood pressure kiosks are good, but you just have to make sure it's automated, that it's calibrated. But if it's a person that takes it, then I think that would be good. But no, that's also a great suggestion to do it as well. But a lot of the blood pressure monitors that you buy in your local drugstores, those are not as expensive as they used to be. So I think those are good too.
Well, I know we just have a couple of seconds left, so I want to give you an opportunity because you're not done today. There is another program that I know is going to be offered, I believe, on NINDS Facebook page. Can you tell us what that is and how people can watch to get more information?
Yes, we have a Facebook Live that we're doing today with the HBC, the DC HBCU Alumni Association. And so I'm going to be or had conversations with two people who have dealt personally with the impact of high blood pressure. And so you can check that out later today on Facebook. Also, I suggest going to the Mind Your Risk website, and we have a lot of great information there. And that's www.mindyourrisk.nih.gov. And that's www.
And it's Mind Your Risks, guys. So it's somebody stick it in the chat if you have time.
Yes.
MIEYOURRISKS.nih.gov. So that's a place that people can go for more information. And then the conversation about high blood pressure, stroke, and dementia in Black men is from 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern today on the NINDS Brain for Life Facebook page. So we really want people to go and get that information and check the website and just share things that they've learned here today. But you got the floor. Give us the last 30 seconds. Tell us something if we've already talked about it, you just want to say it again. Tell us the most important thing.
Yes. No, well, first, I just want to say thank you to you for being such an advocate for great health and being allowing your platform to talk about this today. But we don't have to allow uncontrolled high blood pressure to cause us to have a heart attack or stroke or dementia. We can really mind our risk and try to get them under control and decrease our risk of these things happening and live a whole and healthy life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope everyone who's watching will get started today. And the one way they can start is by sharing this information. So guys, please do that. Thank you so much, Dr. Benson. You are welcome anytime because we want to keep talking about it and just all get better together.
Well, thank you, Monique. And again, I look forward to taking you up on that and talking to you again in the future.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Guys, family, I hope that you have enjoyed this. And there's an X you can click, or your assistant can click, Dr. Benson. I'm just going to wrap up with folks for a few minutes more. There we go. Guys, this is so important. And what I didn't get to say to him, but I think it's obvious, the messaging here. You know, we have a well-educated MD, PhD Black man who is at the head for our government of the part of the organization that deals with racial disparities and inequity in health. And that's what we need. And I'm thankful to the Biden-Harris administration for putting people in place who speak our language, who understand the issues, who care about the issues, who care about communities of color that are being oppressed and that deal with oppression in all kinds of different ways and deal with the effects of racism in all kinds of different ways. But I'm also thankful for what they do because there is so much more information out there than I believe we are accessing. And somebody asked for me to give the website again. So I want to do that. Let me go to the end of my notes so that I can give it to you. It is mindyourrisks.nih.gov. So that's mindyourrisks.nih.gov. And when we put up the clips for today's show, and when we post the full show, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Monique Pressley TV. When we posted this information, it will be there in the caption so that you can get the information and share it. But this is our lives. This is our fathers, our brothers, our husbands, our sons, our nephews, our friends, ourselves. This is our lives. And each of us can play a part in us getting much better outcomes, right? So that's all that we have for today. We got another super exciting show tomorrow. And thank you for putting that in the chat, guys. So take a screenshot of it real quick, okay? And then share it with somebody you love. Share it with people you don't love. They might be nicer if they feel better, okay? So until tomorrow, again, if you want to support us, support the work that we're doing, I hope you find this to be of value. You can partner with us. Thank you. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for partnering with us. Thank you, Ben Cronk Law. Thank you, Scott Bolden. Thank you, Black Voters Matter Fund. We appreciate you. There's room. The more the merrier. So email our team at sales@moniquepressley.com if you'd like to become a friend of the show. If you'd like to partner with us in advertising for the show, be a sponsor, or you could just give. We appreciate you. It's Cash App, $ Monique Pressley TV, and PayPal, paypal.me/Monique Pressley TV. No give too great or too small. We are thankful for them all. I will see you tomorrow right here on Make It Make Sense at noon Eastern. Bye-bye.